What starts as a humiliating accident becomes a dangerous game of secrets, desire, and devastating betrayals. As Lily discovers the dark truth about her past and Ethan's empire, she must choose between love and revenge, forgiveness and justice. Story time, fam, and this one is dripping with romance, secrets, and one unforgettable twist. Let's jump straight into it. Asterisk, the marble beneath Lily's knees felt like ice, even through her soaked uniform. She pressed her palms against the courtyard stones, hot water pooling around her trembling fingers as she tried to steady herself. The fountain's rim had betrayed her, slick from the evening's downpour, and now she sat dripping in the shadow of the Hale estate like some pathetic creature dragged from the depths. Her breath came in sharp bursts, visible in the cool night air. The roses she'd been pruning lay scattered beside her abandoned tools, their thorns catching moonlight like tiny daggers. She should have left hours ago when the first drops started falling, but the damask roses near the fountain had been overgrown, their beauty suffocating under wild growth. It's like everything else in her life that she couldn't control. Christ, she whispered, pushing wet hair from her face. Her thin blouse clung to her skin like a second layer, practically transparent under the estate's security lights. The jacket she'd thrown over the bench was soaked through, useless as everything else she'd tried to hold on to. Footsteps echoed across the courtyard, deliberate and unhurried. Lily's heart stopped. She knew those sounds from the gardening shed windows when she'd watched him cross to his car in the mornings. Expensive leather soles on stone, confident, uncompromising. Ethan Hale emerged from the shadows like something from a fever dream, his charcoal suit untouched by the moisture that seemed to cling to everything else. Silver threaded through his dark hair caught the light, those steel-gray eyes that had built empires and destroyed competitors fixed on her with surgical precision. Well, his voice cut through the night air like silk over steel. This is unexpected. Lily scrambled backward, her wet hands slipping on the marble. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I was just finishing the roses and I slipped. I didn't mean to stop. The single word froze her mid-sentence. He moved closer, each step measured. And predatory. You're soaked to the bone and babbling like a guilty child. Neither suits you. Heat flooded her cheeks despite the cold. Mr. Hale, I can explain. Can you? He tilted his head, studying her with the same intensity she'd seen him use during business calls through the manor's windows. Because from where? I'm standing. It looks like my gardener has been taking midnight swims in my fountain. I'm not, Lily started to protest, then caught herself. What was she going to say? That she wasn't really just a gardener? That 6 months ago she'd lived in a penthouse across town before her. Father's business partner had stolen everything and left her family with nothing but medical bills and shame. You're not what? Ethan's voice dropped lower. Dangerous curiosity. Threading through each word. Not trespassing? Not half naked in my courtyard after midnight? The words hit like physical blows. Lily wrapped her arms around herself, trying to preserve what little dignity remained. I work here. I have every rights? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You work for me, which means you exist at my discretion. And right now, you're testing that discretion severely. Thunder rumbled overhead, promising more rain. Lily looked up at the dark clouds gathering above the estate's towering walls, then back at the man who could end her employment with a single word. The man whose money paid for her mother's treatments. The man who held her survival in his perfectly manicured hands. Please, she whispered, hating how small her voice sounded. Don't fire me. I need this job. Something shifted in his expression so subtle she almost missed it. His gaze dropped to her trembling hands, the water still dripping from her hair. The way she clutched herself like armor against his judgment. You're shivering. It wasn't a question. Before she could respond, he was shrugging out of his jacket. The movement was fluid, practiced, revealing the lean strength beneath his perfectly pressed shirt. He stepped forward and draped the jacket over her shoulders, his fingers brushing her collarbone for the briefest moment. The jacket was warm, carrying his scent of cedar and something darker, something that made her pulse quicken despite everything. She pulled it closer, inhaling without meaning to. Thank you, she managed. Ethan stepped back, but his eyes never left her face. "What's your name?" The question caught her off guard. After 6 months of being invisible, of keeping her head down and her past buried, he was asking her name. Lily. Lily Chen. Lily Chen. He repeated it slowly, as if testing how it felt on his tongue. "And how long have you been working my gardens, Lily Chen?" "At 6 months. She met his gaze, something in his tone making her skin prickle with warning. "Since January." January. His smile was razor-sharp. Interesting timing. Before she could ask what he meant, he turned away, pulling his phone from his pocket. "Maria. Yes, I need you in the courtyard. We have a situation that requires your discretion." He ended the call and looked back at her, those steel eyes unreadable in the moonlight. "You'll come inside. Get warm. And then we're going to have a very long conversation about exactly who you are and what you're really doing on my estate." The way he said it made ice form in her veins, despite his warm jacket around her shoulders, because buried in that silky threat was something that terrified her more than losing her job. He knew. Somehow, Ethan Hale knew she wasn't who she claimed to be. The estate's interior was a temple to power and old money, all dark wood and crystal that caught light like captured stars. Lily's wet shoes squeaked against marble floors as Maria fussed around her, wrapping her in heated towels and pressing a mug of tea into her shaking hands. "Oh, you poor thing," Maria murmured, her weathered face creased with concern. "What were you doing out there so late? Working?" Lily's voice came out hoarse. She risked a glance at Ethan, who stood with his back to the massive stone fireplace, arms crossed, watching every movement she made. "I lost track of time. In the rain?" Maria clicked her tongue disapprovingly. "Child, those roses will survive one more day," but Lily knew they wouldn't. Nothing survived when you stopped fighting for it. She'd learned that lesson when her father's business partner, Richard Blackwood, had systematically destroyed everything her family had built. When the accounts had been emptied and the house seized, and her mother's treatments had suddenly become a luxury they couldn't afford. "Maria." Ethan's voice cut through the domestic warmth like a blade. "Leave us." The older woman glanced between them, clearly reluctant. "Sir, perhaps the girl should rest first now." Maria squeezed Lily's shoulder and whispered, "Call if you need anything." Then she was gone, leaving Lily alone with a man who had the power to destroy what little she'd managed to rebuild. Ethan moved to the bar cart, pouring amber liquid into 2 crystal tumblers. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken questions. When he turned back, his expression had shifted into something harder, more predatory. "Tell me about your father, Lily." The words hit her like a physical blow. Her mug slipped from nerveless fingers, shattering against the marble floor in an explosion of porcelain and hot tea. "I don't know what you mean." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. Ethan stepped over the mess without looking down, holding out one of the tumblers. "Drink. You're going to need it." She took the glass with trembling hands, the crystal cold against her palms. "Mr. Hale, I think there's been some mistake. Lily Chen, formerly Lily Blackwood, daughter of Marcus Blackwood, who used to own Blackwood Industries before his partner stole everything and left him to die in disgrace." Ethan's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Did I miss anything important?" The world tilted sideways. Lily gripped the tumbler harder, using the pain of crystal edges against her fingers to keep herself grounded. "How do you know?" He settled into the leather chair across from her, crossing one leg over the other with casual elegance. "I make it my business to know everyone who works for me, especially when they're using false names and have connections to people I've destroyed." "Destroyed?" The word came out as a whisper. "Richard Blackwood was stealing from his clients for years before I exposed him, including from his own partner, your father." Ethan sipped his whiskey, studying her over the rim. "I bought Blackwood Industries for pennies on the dollar after the scandal broke. It's quite a profitable acquisition." Lily's vision blurred. She'd spent months believing her father's partner had betrayed them out of greed. But this man sitting across from her had orchestrated their downfall, had bought their ruin and turned it into profit. "You knew who I was when you hired me. It wasn't a question. I knew who you were the moment you walked onto my property 6 months ago." His voice was silk over steel. "The question is why." Let you stay. Why did you? The words came out raw, broken. Ethan leaned forward, his gray eyes intense in the firelight. Because I wanted to see what Marcus Blackwood's daughter would do when she had nothing left. Whether she'd fight or break. And you fought. Quietly, desperately. But you fought. Working in my gardens, sending every penny to pay for your mother's cancer treatments. Never once asking for help or revealing who you were. He paused, something flickering across his features. It was almost admirable. The tumbler slipped. From her numb fingers, hitting the floor but somehow not breaking, whiskey spread across marble like spilled blood. You bastard. Her voice came out steady despite the fury building in her chest. You've been watching me struggle, watching my mother suffer, knowing you could help but choosing not to because you wanted to see me crawl. Yes, the simple admission was worse than any elaborate justification would have been. Lily stared at him, this beautiful, cruel man who had systematically destroyed her life for sport. My father trusted Richard Blackwood. They were friends. For 20 years, your father was naive. He trusted the wrong person and paid the price. Ethan's expression didn't change. Business is war, Lily. The weak don't survive. And my mother? What's her crime in your war? For the first time, something shifted behind his eyes. A crack in that perfect, cold facade. Collateral damage? Lily stood slowly, his jacket sliding. From her shoulders to pool on the chair. The wet blouse clung to her skin, but she didn't care anymore. Let him see her vulnerability. Let him see what his war had cost. You want to know why I stayed invisible for 6 months? She stepped closer, and he tensed slightly. Because I was planning to kill you. The admission hung between them like a live wire. Ethan's hand stilled on his glass, but his expression remained maddeningly calm. Were you now? Every night I'd lie awake thinking about it. How I'd do it. Where. When. Her voice gained strength with each word. I studied your routines, your security, your weaknesses. I got close enough to poison your morning coffee a dozen times, but you didn't. No. She was close enough now to see the flecks of darker gray in his eyes, close enough to smell his cologne mixed with whiskey. Because killing you wouldn't save my mother. It wouldn't bring back my father, or our home, or the life you stole from us. So what stopped you? Lily smiled, and it was sharp enough to match his own. I realized revenge was too good for you. You want to see me break? You want to watch me crawl and beg and suffer for your entertainment? Yes, he said softly, dangerously. Oh, then you're going to be very disappointed. She leaned closer, her breath ghosting across his cheek. Because I'm going to do something much worse than kill you, Ethan Hale. Which is, her smile widened, feral and beautiful in the firelight. I'm going to make you fall in love with me. And then I'm going to destroy you the same way you destroyed my family. Before he could respond, she turned and walked toward the door, her wet shoes squelching. Against marble with each step? Lily. She paused at the threshold, but didn't turn around. You're still fired. Her laughter was low, musical, and absolutely terrifying. No, I'm not, because now you're curious. You want to see if I can do it? If Marcus Blackwood's naive? Daughter has what it takes to bring down the great Ethan Hale. She looked back over her shoulder, and the expression on her face made his breath catch. Game on. Three weeks later, Lily knelt in the estate's rose garden, wearing a dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Ethan had sent it to her cramped apartment with a note. If you're going to play the game, dress the part. The midnight. Blue silk clung to her curves like liquid shadow, and she'd paired it with heels that made her legs look endless. But her hands were still dirty from replanting the heritage roses, still calloused from months of manual labor. The contradiction was deliberate. You missed a spot. She didn't look up as Ethan approached, his footsteps silent on the gravel path. Did I there by the fountain? He gestured with his coffee cup. The same one she'd thought about poisoning weeks ago? The soil looks uneven. Lily rose gracefully, brushing imaginary dirt from her skirt. I'll fix it later. I've somewhere to be. The Morrison Charity Gala. It wasn't a question. My invitation must have gotten lost. She smiled, the expression perfectly innocent. How unfortunate. I hear it's going to be quite the event. For 3 weeks, she'd been playing a careful game, showing up to work in increasingly expensive clothes that he'd somehow arranged to appear in her wardrobe, learning his schedule and accidentally appearing wherever he happened to be, making herself impossible to ignore while never directly engaging with him. The results had been delicious to watch. She'd seen him at his office window, tracking her movements through the gardens, caught him asking Maria casual questions about her habits, her background, her relationships. The great Ethan Hale was becoming obsessed with his gardener, and she was just getting started. "You look beautiful," he said quietly, and something in his voice made her pulse quicken. "Thank you." She stepped closer, close enough to smell his cologne, close enough to see the way his jaw tensed when she moved. "You look troubled." "A bad day." "At the office?" "Someone's been asking questions about Blackwood Industries, specifically about the acquisition." Lily's heart hammered against her ribs, but her expression didn't change. "How interesting. Any idea who?" "A reporter from the Financial Times. Sarah Chen." His gray eyes studied her face intently. "Any relation? Cousin?" The admission was calculated, another piece of the puzzle she was letting him assemble. She's very thorough in her work. Ethan set his coffee cup on the fountain's edge, never breaking eye contact. And what exactly has she discovered in her thorough work? That Richard Blackwood didn't act alone when he destroyed my father's company. Lily moved closer still until her chest almost brushed his. That someone helped him, guided him, profited from the destruction. "Careful, Lily. That sounds dangerously close to an accusation, does it?" She reached out, straightening his tie with steady fingers. The simple touch made his breath catch, and she filed that reaction away for later use. "I thought it sounded like business. After all, you're the one who taught me that business is war." His hand came up to cover hers, where it rested against his chest, and she could feel his heartbeat thundering beneath the expensive fabric of his shirt. "What do you want?" The question hung between them like a challenge. Lily met his gaze directly, letting him see the steel beneath her silk exterior. "I want my mother to get the treatment she needs without me having to choose between her medication and rent." "That's all for now?" She pulled her hand free, stepping back just enough to make him lean forward unconsciously, chasing the contact. "The gala starts in an hour. I should go." "Lily." Her name came out rough, desperate. "No, don't play games you can't win." "Who says I can't win?" She gathered her purse and jacket, every movement calculated for maximum impact. Wanted to see if Marcus Blackwood's daughter could fight. "Tonight, you'll get your answer." The Morrison Charity Gala was held in the ballroom of the city's most exclusive hotel, a glittering display of wealth and power that had once been Lily's natural habitat. She moved through the crowd with practiced ease, accepting champagne and making small talk, while keeping one eye on the entrance. When Ethan arrived, the energy in the room shifted. Conversations paused as heads turned to track his progress, and Lily felt that familiar thrill of power by association. He was magnificent in his element, commanding and dangerous. Drawing people into his orbit through sheer force of personality, he found her by the auction display, studying a painting that looked suspiciously similar to one that had hung in her childhood home. Enjoying the art, recognizing it, actually. She sipped her champagne, letting the bubbles tickle her throat. "That's a Monet from the Blackwood collection. Sold at auction last year to pay creditors. You have good taste. I bought it myself." The casual cruelty of the statement hit her like a physical blow, but she absorbed it without flinching. "Of course you did." The invitation was unexpected, but Lily set down her glass and placed her hand in his. "I thought you'd never ask." He led her onto the dance floor, one hand settling at her waist, while the other engulfed her smaller fingers. They moved together perfectly, as if they'd been dancing for years instead of moments. "You're different tonight," he murmured against her ear, his breath warm against her skin. "How so?" "More dangerous. It suits you." Lily tilted her head back to meet his gaze, letting him see the fire burning behind her careful composure. "You haven't seen anything yet?" The music swirled around them, but she was only aware of his hands. On her body, the heat radiating from his skin, the way his eyes never left her face. When the song ended, he didn't let go. Come with me. It wasn't a request. He guided her through the crowd and into a private elevator, his keycard accessing floors that weren't available to ordinary guests. The penthouse suite overlooked the city, floor-to-ceiling windows revealing a glittering landscape of lights and possibility. Impressive, Lily said, though her voice came out breathier than she'd intended. It's mine, the whole building, actually. Ethan moved to the bar, pouring 2 glasses of wine with hands that weren't quite steady. I thought you should see what you're trying to destroy. This isn't what I'm trying to destroy. She accepted the wine but didn't drink, needing to keep her head clear. Money can be replaced, buildings can be rebuilt. Then what? Instead of answering, she set down her glass and crossed to where he stood. Her hands came up to frame his face, thumbs brushing across the sharp angles of his cheekbones. Your certainty, she whispered. Your control. Your belief that you're untouchable. Before he could respond, she rose on her toes and kissed him. The contact was electric, sending shockwaves through her entire body. His arms came around her immediately, pulling her against him as if he'd been drowning and she was air. The kiss deepened, became desperate, and Lily let herself fall into it for just a moment. Let herself pretend this was real instead of calculated. Let herself forget that this beautiful, dangerous man had destroyed everything she'd ever loved when they broke apart. Both breathing hard, she stepped back and smoothed her dress with trembling hands. Good night, Ethan. Don't go. The raw vulnerability in his voice almost made her waver, almost made her forget why she was here. I have to. My cousin's article goes live in the morning, and I want to be there when you read it. His face went white. What article? Lily's smile was sharp as broken glass. The one about how you helped Richard Blackwood steal from his own partner. How you provided the inside information he needed to drain the accounts and sell the assets. How you were never the hero who exposed the corruption. That's impossible. There's no proof, isn't there? She pulled her phone from her purse, showing him the screen. Bank records, emails, meeting schedules, all time-stamped and verified. Richard kept very detailed records. Apparently he didn't trust his partner any more than you trusted him. Ethan stared at the evidence of his own betrayal, his face cycling through shock, anger, and something that looked almost like respect. How long have you had this? Since the beginning? Sarah found it months ago, but I asked her to wait. I needed to understand you first. Needed to see if there was anything worth saving beneath all that beautiful cruelty. And Lily moved toward the door, pausing with her hand on the handle. There is, which is why this is going to hurt so much more than you deserve. She stepped into the hallway, letting the door close behind her with a soft click. But not before she heard him call her name, and the broken desperation in his voice almost made her turn back. Almost. The article hit at 6 a.m. like a financial tsunami. By 7, Ethan's phone was ringing constantly. Stock prices plummeted. Board members demanded emergency meetings. The carefully constructed empire he'd built on the bones of other people's dreams was cracking apart in real time. Lily stood in her mother's hospital room, watching the news coverage on the mounted TV while holding her mother's frail hand. The woman who had once commanded boardrooms and charity galas now weighed barely 90 pounds, her skin translucent from months of chemotherapy. Is that the man from the estate? Her mother asked weakly, studying Ethan's face on the screen as reporters shouted questions at him outside his office building. Yes, Mama. He's handsome and dangerous. As despite her illness. Eleanor Blackwood's eyes were still sharp. You're in love with him. Lily's breath caught. Don't be ridiculous. I've been watching you for weeks. The way your face changes when you talk about work. The expensive clothes that mysteriously appear in your closet. Eleanor squeezed her daughter's hand with what little strength she had left. The way you look like your heart is breaking even though you should be celebrating. He destroyed our family, Mama. He helped Richard steal everything from us. And now you've destroyed him back? Is it enough? The simple question hung in the sterile air between them. On the TV, analysts were predicting Ethan's complete financial ruin within days. Everything he'd built would be stripped away, just like it had been for her family. Justice perfectly served. So why did she feel like she was drowning? No, Lily whispered. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Roof of St. Mary's Hospital. 1 hour. Come alone. She knew that imperious tone, even in digital form. Ethan. Lily kissed her mother's forehead and promised to return soon. Then took the elevator to the hospital's highest floor. The roof access was supposedly locked, but the door stood open, revealing a figure silhouetted against the morning sky. Ethan stood at the ledge, still wearing yesterday's clothes, his perfect appearance finally showing cracks. His hair was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled, and when he turned to face her, his eyes were red-rimmed with exhaustion and something that looked dangerously close to heartbreak. "Congratulations," he said quietly. "You won." "Did I?" Lily approached, carefully, noting how close he stood to the edge. "You don't look like a man who's accepted defeat." "What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry? That I regret what I did to your family?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I'm not. Business is war, and in war, there are casualties." "Then why did you ask me here?" "'Cause I need to." No, if any of it was real. The rawness in his voice made her chest tighten. "Any of what? The kiss?" "The way you looked at me when we danced. The way you trembled when I touched you." He stepped closer, and she could see the genuine anguish in his gray eyes. "Or was it all just another weapon in your arsenal?" Lily opened her mouth to lie, to tell him it had all been calculated, but the words wouldn't come. Because the truth was more complicated than her carefully planned revenge. The truth was that, somewhere between plotting his destruction and watching him crumble, she'd made the mistake of seeing him as human. "It was supposed to be," she said finally. "I was supposed to make you fall in love with me and then destroy you. Simple. Clean. Justice. But you made me remember what it felt like to be powerful, to be desired by someone who could have anyone." She touched his face gently, feeling him lean into the contact despite everything. "You made me remember who I used to be before you took it all away. And now? Now you're about to lose everything, just like we did. Your company, your reputation, your freedom when the criminal charges are filed, and I should be dancing on your grave. But you're not. No." The admission felt like tearing out her own heart. "Because I love you, and I hate myself for it." Ethan closed his eyes, his face a mask of pain. "Christ, Lily, you really are your father's daughter. What's that supposed to mean?" He loved Richard Blackwood right up until the end. Even when the evidence was undeniable, part of him kept hoping his friend would find a way to make it right. Ethan opened his eyes, and they were full of self-loathing. "Just like you love me despite knowing exactly what I am?" "So what happens?" Now, before he could answer, her phone rang. Eh? The caller ID showed her mother's doctor, and ice filled her veins. She answered on the second ring. "Miss Blackwood, you need to come downstairs immediately. Your mother's condition has deteriorated." Rapidly, the phone slipped from nerveless fingers, clattering on the concrete roof. Ethan caught her as her knees buckled, his arms strong and sure around her trembling body. "She's dying," Lily whispered. "The treatment isn't working anymore, and I don't have the money for the experimental program she needs. The insurance won't." "Cover it? How much? 2 million? Minimum?" She laughed bitterly. "Might as well be 2 billion at this point." Ethan was quiet for a long moment, his arms still holding her against his chest. When he spoke, his voice was steady and certain. "I can get you the money." "How?" "Your assets are frozen, your accounts are under investigation. I have something the investigators don't know about. A private account in the Caymans, completely separate from the business. Clean money from legitimate investments." He tilted her face up to meet his eyes. "My escape fund. 2.5 million, give or take." Lily stared at him, not daring to hope. "Why would you do that?" "Because I destroyed your family, and now I have a chance to save what's left of it." His thumb brushed across her cheek, wiping away tears she didn't realize she'd shed. "Because maybe this is how I finally do something right. If you give me that money, you'll have nothing left. There's no way to start over, no way to fight the charges I know. Ethan, you could go to prison." "For years, I know," smiled, and for the first time since she'd known him, it was gentle instead of sharp. Some things are worth the sacrifice. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she couldn't accept his help. But her mother was dying 3 floors below, and time was running out for noble gestures. "There's one condition," he said quietly. "What?" "When this is over, when your mother is safe and healthy, you disappear. Change your name, move somewhere I'll never find you. Live the life you should have had if I'd never destroyed it. And you, I'll face whatever comes next. Alone like I deserve." Lily kissed him then, desperate and grateful and heartbroken all at once, because she finally understood what her father had felt in those last days, loving someone who had betrayed everything he held dear. "I hate you," she whispered against his lips. "I know." He kissed her back, pouring years of regret and a lifetime of longing into the contact. "I love you too." And as sirens wailed in the distance, and her mother fought for her life below, Lily realized that sometimes the greatest victories felt exactly like the most devastating defeats. 6 months later, Lily sat beside her mother's hospital bed in Switzerland, watching the alpine sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and rose. Eleanor was sitting up for the first time in weeks, color returning to her cheeks as the experimental treatment worked its slow miracle. "Tell me about the garden," her mother said, voice stronger than it had been in months. Lily described the small plot behind their rented cottage, the heritage roses she'd planted in soil that belonged to no painful memories. The therapy of working with her hands again, creating beauty instead of orchestrating destruction. The question she'd been dreading hung in the pristine air between them. Lily had stopped checking the news about Ethan weeks ago, unable to bear seeing his name associated with prison sentences and public disgrace. "I don't know, Mama. I kept my promise. I disappeared. But you think about him every day. Every hour. Every time she touched the roses and remembered his hands covering hers in his study. It doesn't matter what I think. He made his choice." Lano smiled sadly. "Sometimes the people who hurt us most are the only ones who can save us. Sometimes we're the only ones who can save them back." Before Lily could respond, a nurse knocked softly. "Miss Chen, there's someone here to see you." Lily's heart stopped. She'd been Lily Chen for 6 months now, a new identity Ethan had somehow arranged before the authorities seized his assets. "No one should know that name here. I'll be right back, Mama." She walked through the hospital's gleaming corridors on unsteady legs, trying to prepare herself for disappointment. It couldn't be him. Ethan Hale was probably in federal prison by now, paying for crimes that had started long before she'd entered his life. But when she rounded the corner to the visitor's lounge, her breath caught in her throat. He sat by the window overlooking the mountains, thinner than she remembered, wearing simple jeans and a sweater instead of his usual armor of expensive suits. His hair had grown out, silver threading through the dark strands, and when he looked up at her approach, she saw something in his gray eyes she'd never seen before. Peace. "Hello, Lily. You're supposed to be in prison." The words came out breathless, accusatory. "I was. For 4 months." He stood slowly, as if afraid sudden movement might make her run. "The charges were reduced when I provided testimony against Richard Blackwood and several other associates. Turns out prosecutors care more about the big fish than the medium ones. And now I'm free, broke, unemployed, and completely without prospects, but free." His smile was rueful. "It's remarkably liberating, actually." "How did you find me?" "I didn't. Your cousin Sarah did. Apparently she's been keeping track of you at my request." He stepped closer, hope and uncertainty warring in his expression. "She said your mother's treatment is working." "It is." Lily hugged her arms around herself, a familiar defensive gesture. "The doctors say she'll make a full recovery." "Good, that's good." They stood in awkward silence, two people who had destroyed and saved each other in equal measure, unsure how to bridge the gap between love and betrayal. "Why are you here, Ethan?" "Because I couldn't stop thinking about what you said on the hospital roof, about remembering who you used to be." He ran a hand through his hair, suddenly looking younger, more vulnerable. "I want to find out who I could be if someone thought I was worth saving. And what makes you think that someone is me? Because you're the only person who's ever seen all of me. The cruelty, The calculating ambition, the capacity for destruction, and you loved me anyway. His voice dropped to a whisper. Because when you had the chance to let me fall, you caught me instead. Lily's chest tightened with the weight of memories, the kiss that had shattered her careful plans, the moment she'd realized her heart was no longer her own. The way he'd sacrificed everything to save her mother without hesitation or condition. I kept my promise, she said quietly. I disappeared. I started over, I know. And I'm not asking you to go back to who you were before. I'm asking if you want to find out who we could be together. No games, no revenge, no lies, just us. Us. She tested the word, tasting possibility and terror in equal measure. We destroyed each other's lives, and we saved each other. Maybe that's what love is for people like us. Lily looked at this man who had been her enemy, her target, her salvation, who had lost everything and somehow found himself in the wreckage, who had crossed an ocean and tracked down a ghost because he couldn't let go of, something that had started as a lie and become more real than anything else in their carefully constructed lives. My mother wants to meet you. Does she know everything? I told her everything. Lily stepped closer, close enough to see the hope blooming in his eyes. She says anyone who would give up their freedom to save a stranger's life can't be entirely without redemption. And what do you say? Instead of answering, she took his face in her hands, studying the familiar features that had haunted her dreams for months. The sharp cheekbones, the steel-gray eyes, the mouth that had learned to be gentle instead of cruel. I say we both deserve a chance to find out who we are when we're not trying to destroy each other. She kissed him then, soft and tentative, tasting forgiveness and possibility on his lips. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers, breathing her in like a man who had been drowning and finally found air. I love you, he whispered. Not the gardener, not Marcus Blackwood's daughter, and not the woman who brought me down. You, Lily Chen, whoever you choose to be, I love you too. Admission felt like stepping off a cliff, exhilarating and terrifying. Ethan, whoever you are now. Ethan Hale died in a federal courthouse 6 months ago. I'm thinking of going by my middle name, James. He smiled, and it was soft and real and completely free of the sharp edges that had once defined him. James Nobody at your service. Well, James Nobody, Lily said, taking his hand and leading him toward her mother's room. I hope you're ready to learn about Swiss gardening techniques. We're going to be here for a while. For you, I have all the time in the world. As they walked through the hospital corridors together, past windows that revealed mountains and endless sky, Lily thought about the strange alchemy of love and revenge. Destruction could lead to creation. How the people who hurt us most deeply are sometimes the only ones who can teach us how to heal. She had set out to destroy Ethan Hale and ended up saving them both, had planned to break his heart and surrendered her own instead, had sought justice and found something much rarer and more precious. She had found forgiveness. And in the end, perhaps that was the greatest victory of all. Asterisk. What would you risk for love? What would you sacrifice for revenge? Join Lily and Ethan's emotionally devastating journey that proves sometimes the person who destroys you is the only one who can save you. Asterisk. Don't forget to, like if this story gave you all the feels, subscribe for more addictive love stories. Share with someone who needs a good cry. Hit the bell for notifications on new uploads. Thank you for watching. Your support means everything to us. Yeah.